Welcome, brave souls, to Fear File Chronicles, your one-way ticket to spine-chilling stories and terrifying tales. Tonight, we'll be diving into the darkest corners of the human mind with the story. Camp Redwood are running out of counselors. These children are not children. Penned by the twisted mind of Trash Tia. Together, we'll explore the unexplained and face our deepest fears. But before we begin, if you enjoy trembling in terror, be sure to hit that like button. Share this video with your fellow fear fanatics and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click the bell notification so you never miss an eerie episode. Your support truly means the world to us. So feel free to leave a comment below to join the Fear File Chronicles community. Now, without further ado, let's unravel the mysteries of the unknown together. As we delve into tonight's fear-inducing story, Camp Redwood are running out of counselors. These children are not children. Dim the lights and prepare yourself for a chilling journey into the Fear File Chronicles.
In hindsight, I should have heeded the Kill Bill alarm bells ringing in my head. When 8-year-old Cassie proclaimed she and her cabin mates planned to ditch camp activities to play Operation, I should have been more concerned. However, I had other pressing issues to address. 7 of my fellow counselors, along with our head counselor, had mysteriously vanished. The disappearances started innocuously enough. When Lily and Joey, who had been exhibiting sexual tension for weeks, sneaked into the woods, no one batted an eye. But then they never returned. Next, Teddy and Yuri embarked on a search mission for the missing pair, only to vanish themselves. It was as if a savage creature lay in wait, ready to ensnare any unsuspecting teenager who dared venture into its territory. With 6 of us remaining, panic set in. I had never envisioned summer camp unfolding this way. I had even contemplated spending the summer working at my local Sephora. But my mom insisted on the camp, and at 18, her word still carried weight. So it was farewell to civilization and a hearty welcome to the Canadian wilderness. Lunchtime at Camp Redwood found me struggling to maintain my cheerful facade as 15 kids queued in front of me. The hours since Connor, the most recent counselor to disappear, ticked by at an agonizing pace. He was supposed to be fixing the emergency generator after the power outage, but he vanished an hour later. The rapid series of disappearances was unnerving, leaving me questioning if I'd be next. I had grown up on horror stories set in summer camps, where doom loomed over every camper and counselor. Was that our fate too? I stirred a giant pot of chocolate syrup, clutching the ladle tightly as I watched the runny chocolate drip from its edge. The sight turned my stomach. My mom had to pick a summer camp notorious for vanishing counselors and a complete absence of adult authority. This just left us. A group of 12 teens looking for an easy summer gig before college as the reluctant authorities. We wore brave faces, pretending everything was fine, despite our simmering terror. Harry, one of the remaining counselors, was trying his best to entertain the kids. With sweat pouring down his face, he played the role of the human pony, ferrying giggling children around on his back. The strain was evident in his eyes. He wasn't supposed to be the entertainer. That was Teddy's role. He should have been part of the search party, but with Teddy missing, Harry was the kids' new favorite toy. The Harry Carlisle I met initially was the sarcastic bystander who cracked crude jokes. Now, he was the exhausted playground ride that the children refused to turn off. He managed the first few rides cheerfully enough to keep spirits up, but the strain was taking its toll.
Ouch!
Harry yelped as little Eleanor poked his eyes. He managed to stay upright, ordered the children off his back, and declared an end to the horse rides. He retreated under the onslaught of disappointed faces, raising his hands in surrender.
Come on, guys! My back isn't built for all of you!
He protested to the sound of giggling and chants of horsey. It was him against 10 kids. It could be 2 against 10 if I pitched in. But I was not about to put my energy into pretend wrestling with 8-year-olds. Harry shot me a hopeful look, but I ignored it and focused on the slightly burnt nuggets I was preparing for lunch. As Harry combed his fingers through his sandy hair, he made a face when a brave little girl named Phoebe stepped forward.
No!
Harry shook his head. He squeezed the front of his counselor shirt that was practically glued to him. The temperature still hadn't let up, even as it was heading towards 8 p.m. Nighttime, I thought dizzily. It was almost bedtime, yet still no adults were in sight.
I refuse to surrender,
he told her firmly.
Phoebe, I'm not joking around when I say my back is hurting. We've been playing horsey for 2 hours.
So? She challenged.
So?
Harry retorted, though he didn't yell or hiss or swear at them. Such behaviors were strictly taboo with kids. However, I could see he was coming close to breaking that rule.
Because I'm tired,
he confessed through a Camp Redwood grin, which was quickly morphing into a grimace. We all had abandoned the pretense of enthusiasm when our colleagues began to disappear. Now we were merely shells of our former jovial selves.
And, did you know that if you ride a horsey at this time, the ghosts will come and get you?
He offered. When a boy opened his mouth, his eyes widening with fright, Harry realized his mistake.
I mean the nice ghosts, yeah. The ones who play in these woods. It's a well-known Camp Redwood legend that ghosts don't like horse rides. In fact,
his lips curved into a devilish smile now that he had the attention of several wide-eyed faces. The kids dropped onto the ground to listen, their hands clasped in their laps. This was the quietest they had been all day. I could understand why, though. Harry had been leading the campfire ghost stories for 3 nights in a row, and he was a compelling storyteller. With every eye on him, Harry lowered his voice into a whisper.
Do you guys want to know what they do?
He asked. The kids nodded with wide eyes.
They sneak into unsuspecting cabins,
he began.
Harry!
A warning came from outside. Rowan's voice floated in through the open window, where he was standing guard, watching for the return of any counselors. Since the only adult had disappeared, he had been appointed leader, and was taking the role quite seriously. His warning was valid, though. Sometimes Harry's ghost stories were a little too intense for young kids whose imaginations could run wild, especially at night. Olive, my cabin mate, had to relinquish her bed for a little girl who was convinced that Harry's depiction of Slenderman, the tree boy, was going to sneak into her bed and turn her into an apple seed.
Did I say sneak into cabins? I meant dance around the woods.
Harry corrected himself.
And they look for their next unsuspecting victim.
Harry!
Rowan interrupted again.
Friend!
Harry quickly amended when he noticed a little boy's eyes go wide.
They are looking for a friend. So the point of my story is...
Horsey rides get us new friends?
Phoebe interrupted, skepticism etched on her face. The arch of her brow and her widening smile gave away her disbelief. The girl shook dark curls out of her face, smirking. I think it was her pleading eyes which won him over. Because, with a resigned sigh, Harry dropped onto his knees and practically invited her to climb on his back. And she did, planting one glittery shoe on his spine with enough force to send him sprawling onto his stomach. I might have been imagining it, but it seemed the kids were becoming increasingly mischievous. The little girl was grinning. Not because she could ride her, horsey, but because Harry looked like he was at his wit's end. Before I started here, Mom had given me a talk about how kids can act out when adult authority is lacking. This behavior seemed to fit that bill, but I was puzzled. Only a few days earlier, I had spent the day with Phoebe playing with dolls and having a teddy bear picnic when she admitted she didn't want to swim in the lake with the other kids. Phoebe had been shy and only spoke to me through her teddy bear. So what had changed? Could the lack of adults really be affecting the kids this much?
Ms. Josie?
A voice called out, pulling me out of my thoughts. I hadn't been paying attention and only half noticed some kids helping themselves to chicken nuggets and cookies, piling them on plastic plates and hurrying to their seats as if I were blind. Blinking away my thoughts, I found myself face to face with Eli, who was probably my favorite camper. You're not supposed to have personal preferences when working with kids, as it could upset them. However, it was almost impossible not to like Eli. Hiding behind a mop of brown curls, the boy was one of the more vocal kids in the group. Eli aspired to be an inventor when he grew up, and he was particularly keen on building robots. He had asked me if I wanted to see his robot collection once, but I was too caught up in setting up camp activities. Now, standing in front of me and clutching his tray, he wore a frown.
Josie, I just saw some kids steal chicken nuggets.
He told me. I shrugged and added a large portion to his tray. Well, you can have some extra too, I offered. Eli's smile was not as wide as usual.
Where's Teddy?
He asked. I pretended not to understand, hastily adding more nuggets to his tray as if I could distract him with the extra food. He'll be back soon. Teddy is just playing in the woods, I replied, hoping my evasiveness would suffice.
No, he's not.
At first, I thought I'd misunderstood the boy. The kid wasn't looking at me, too busy counting his nuggets with the prongs of his plastic fork. I leaned forward with my most amiable smile. I'm sorry, what was that, Eli? Eli lifted his head, flashing a wide grin.
Can I borrow a knife, Josie?
Why do you need a knife? I asked, taken aback. Eli shrugged nonchalantly.
There's a squirrel caught in a trap. I want to put it out of its misery, Miss Josie. It's in a lot of pain.
His words struck me as oddly somber. Well, I can't give you a knife. My voice trailed off and my gaze drifted towards Harry and the growing line of kids waiting for a horse ride. But how about you go and ask Harry for a piggyback ride? I suggested, trying to distract him. I'll take care of the squirrel. Eli's eyes filled with tears, and he shook his head. I reached out, grasped his hand, and squeezed it as tight as I could. Eli, we don't need to do that, okay? I'm sure the squirrel can be saved, and I'll make sure to take it to the vet.
But what if it doesn't need saving?
Eli's question was filled with skepticism. I'll save it, Eli, I promise. Eli didn't look convinced, but he nodded with a resigned grumble.
Okay.
He twisted around and joined the other kids, who were engaging Harry. Immediately, I abandoned my station, Rowan's approval notwithstanding, and went outside to search for this purportedly dying squirrel. The sky was darkening when I made it into the woods, with the cotton candy clouds blurring through the thick canopy of trees. Eli had mentioned that it was near the sign, pointing towards the lake, but despite my best efforts, I couldn't see anything. That thought, however, vanished from my head when I heard a squelching sound underfoot. The wet sound sent a jolt of unease down my spine, and I glanced down at the ground, apprehensive about what I might find. A squashed squirrel, perhaps? In Eli's words, the poor thing had been on the brink of death. Though it struck me as strange. There were no animal traps around the camp due to health and safety regulations. So what on earth was I looking at? The bottom of my shoe was caked in dried blood. But it was the object imprinted into the dirt which truly startled me. It looked like an eye. But as I squatted closer to the ground, I spotted something metallic, something glistening around the iris. I picked up a stick and prodded it, but the object didn't budge. It was indeed an eye. An animal's eye, judging from the pigmentation and the color of the iris. However, it was the metallic fragments around the eye that puzzled me. Could they be remnants of a trap, perhaps? Peering closer, I noticed silver slivers embedded in what seemed to be nerve tissue stuck to my shoe. After scraping most of it off, I observed the gleaming pieces of blood-stained metal catching the late-setting sun. I picked up a piece between my forefinger and thumb. The metal wasn't serrated or aged. In fact, it looked quite new, which raised an unsettling question. What was this thing? It seemed to have started converting an animal's eye into metal before abruptly stopping. Could it be a virus? The thought struck me with such force that I fell back, hastily wiping my hands on my shirt. Suddenly, a voice broke my train of thought.
What are you doing?
I nearly jumped out of my skin and scrambled to my feet. Carmel was standing behind me, holding what looked like her 6th or 7th cup of coffee. Her appearance had changed dramatically from the well-put-together, popular girl that she was when camp started. In place of her meticulously maintained blonde ponytail, Carmel's curls were now tied into raggedy pigtails with ribbons that I was pretty sure she had swiped from a camper's doll. She regarded me with unnaturally wide eyes and a strained Camp Redwood smile.
Josie,
she exclaimed, making me startle.
Rowan's holding an emergency meeting in his cabin. So, whatever you're doing can wait.
Her gaze flitted to the ground.
What are you doing?
I considered telling Carmel about my strange discovery, but decided against it, remembering her reaction to a mere spider in our cabin. Instead, I shrugged and said I was looking for the others. Carmel tilted her head, looking unconvinced.
In the dirt?
Footprints, Carmel, I retorted. She shook her head, clearly not buying it.
Okay, whatever. Tell the others I'll be there in a sec. I just need to make sure the kids are okay. We're putting a movie on for them in the lunch hall, so that should distract them for a couple of hours.
I nodded. Did anyone find a phone?
Not one with a signal,
she replied in an unusually loud voice. Carmel. I fought the urge to admonish her for the noise. You're okay, I reassured her softly before setting off to inform the others. I mean, we're not okay, because, yes, things are very screwed up right now, but we need to be optimistic. I exhaled out a breath, searching for eyes in the dark. I tried to smile, tried to keep up that Camp Redwood facade we were all held hostage by until the last day of camp. According to Rule 5 in the Camp Redwood Counselor Handbook, all counselors must retain a smile and a positive attitude. If any counselor is caught making a frowny face or spreading what we call unhappiness, we will be forced to send the counselor home. At this point, I didn't care. But part of me didn't want to scare the little kids.
No, Josie.
The girl grasped hold of my shoulders with a grin rivaling the Joker.
I am so sick of being told to keep smiling. What is that doing exactly? 3 of my cabin mates are missing. I'm the only one left, and Rowan and his team expect me to keep up this act? We are in deep trouble.
She cupped her mouth.
FUCKED. We have no adults, an unexplainable loss of power every few hours, which makes no sense in the middle of nowhere. I mean, what on earth is out there which is sucking that much power, huh? There is no explanation. There should be an explanation. I should be able to think, oh yeah, that's why. But no, things are happening, and I don't know why they're happening. Rowan is trying to force us to act like things are okay, but in reality, he is terrified, Josie. We are all terrified.
I took a step back, keeping hold of her hand. Carmel was trembling, her hands clammy and slimy, entangled in mine. He's just trying to keep the kids from freaking out. She groaned, tears glistening in her eyes.
Okay, yeah. I'm blaming them because they keep acting like everything is okay.
Everything is okay. I turned to her with what I hoped was a reassuring smile, knowing damn well about the thing I'd found in the dirt. If that thing could spread, it would have a field day in an enclosed space like a summer camp. I noticed my own hands, which had been touching the thing, making contact with Carmel, and dropped my hands, inwardly squirming. If that thing was a virus, I was already in trouble. Maybe Carmel, too. If it was fast-acting, it could explain the counselor disappearances. I was already putting together a plan in my head as we headed back to the main cabin. We had to put together a search party. Some of us would stay with the kids, while a small group would venture into the woods to try and look for traces of the missing. If I was right, we would find a horror scene in the woods, and yes, that would be the time to panic. If I was wrong, however, there was still hope.
Are we going to be okay?
Carmel's voice sliced into my thoughts, and I took a moment to drink in the camp around us. Usually, when the sky was turning twilight, it would be bustling with campers and counselors toasting marshmallows on the fire and gathering around to fall asleep to Harry's ghost stories. Carmel would be knelt with a bunch of kids, watching a YouTube video they had all insisted on her watching, while Rowan would be hiding behind his book with his knees to his chest, his gaze glued to every page he flicked through, ignoring everyone. Teddy making funny faces for kids who were scared, and Connor handing out plates of burgers and hot dogs. I remembered feeling safe and at home, cozy around the flickering orange of the fire as chatter turned to laughter and white noise in my head. After the kids went back to their cabins, the group of us would resume positions around the fire. But this time, it was more intimate. With Allison in her cabin, we kind of ignored her rules altogether. Making out happened because, of course, it did. Through the theft of beers from Allison's mini fridge and uncontrollable hormones, there was also late night skinny dipping in the lake. Couples went off into the woods, and we all felt completely comfortable and at home with each other. Looking around at that moment, I felt sick to my stomach. That feeling was gone. The feeling of family and familiarity and friendship. What I was looking at now was that same log we had all sat on, now turned on its side, hot dog buns and candy wrappers littering the ground. It was a ghost camp. I could still see Connor's jacket slung on the ground and Lily's bright pink Ray-Bans sitting on a beer can, because there were no adults to yell at us to clean up after ourselves. I was frowning at the skeleton of the fire when Carmel nudged me.
Hey, Josie?
Her voice was shaking slightly.
You didn't answer my question.
Carmel wanted me to be the voice of reason, and I wasn't that. I was just as scared as her. There was only so much I could sugarcoat, and I gave up doing that after the third counselor disappeared. All I could offer her was forced optimism. Yes, just keep the kids busy, all right?
All right, Josie.
When I was twisting around and power walking to Rowan's cabin, I shouted over my shoulder, "Give them some of those animal crackers."
What animal crackers?
I turned to elaborate, but Carmel was gone. When I finally got to Rowan's cabin, I was sweating through my shirt and had an idea of what I was going to tell the others. It was a thing, which could be considered a disease or a virus. So it was vital that we split into two groups. Half of us would search for the others, while the others would look for anything to get in contact with the outside world, an emergency landline, laptop, or cell phone. I did have one problem, which was lack of evidence. All which was left from the thing I'd found was stuck to my foot. The rest of it was buried in the dirt. It was too dark to search for it, and we would be wasting time doing so. All of that was in my mind and tangled on my tongue, one single string of incomprehensible gibberish I wasn't even sure was English. When I stepped into Rowan's cabin, where 4 sets of eyes met mine, Olive cross-legged on the floor with her arms folded, Harry pacing up and down with a brand new bruise blooming under his eye, courtesy of Eleanor almost poking his eyes out, and Rowan himself sitting on the top bunk, his legs swinging off the side. The guy wasn't built to be our leader, originally being the laziest of our group, opting for sitting in a tree with a book rather than helping set up camp activities. Yet, he had become our default guy in charge because he so happened to be wearing the head counselor hat when Allison disappeared. Admittedly, the bright red cap suited him, contrasting his dark curls under the late-setting sun through the back window, setting stray strands of hair ablaze. The hat, however, was slightly too large for his head, frequently slipping over his eyes. With his dark circled eyes and a dad-like scowl curling on his lips, Rowan looked like a divorced father of 2. Clutching a clipboard to his chest, a pen in his mouth, he bore the semblance of a stern man who had just caught his teenage daughter past her curfew.
Josie,
He said, spitting the pen lid out of his mouth before scribbling something on the clipboard. I suspected he was documenting my attendance for these frustrating crisis meetings. His eyes darted wildly, scanning me for answers.
where the fuck is Carmel?
he demanded. Closing the door behind me, I leaned against it, with my arms folded. So, we're allowed to swear now? I retorted.
Yes.
Rowan rolled his eyes.
There are no kids here, so go crazy,
he said, pointing the pen at me.
Carmel, where is she?
Keeping the kids busy,
a muffled voice from the bottom bunk responded. Barely visible, Callan lay on his stomach, face buried in a pillow.
I suggested playing Shrek for them, but the little shit said they hadn't seen it.
He said, lifting his head and scowling.
I tripping or something? Who hasn't seen Shrek? Do these kids expect a Minecraft movie?
Harry, who'd been pacing the cabin, interrupted.
They don't like that either. Eleanor looked at me like I was crazy when I asked if she liked it.
Fortnite, too.
Olive chimed in, clutching a cushion to her chest.
I suggested playing it a few days ago, and 0 kids knew what it was.
6 counselors are missing.
Rowan raised his voice over the chatter.
And you're questioning what games they like?
His eyes found mine once more.
So, Carmel is with the kids. You're absolutely sure of it?
I nodded. Yeah, I just saw her 5 minutes ago.
Great,
Rowan said, his voice dripping with sarcasm.
I'm sure she won't go missing under mysterious circumstances.
Stop,
Olive interjected, shooting him a glare before throwing a cushion at his face.
I told you. They're probably lost, or maybe they went to get help.
We've all been trained to know every inch of these woods,
Rowan retorted, catapulting the cushion back at her.
They're not lost.
Well, where are they then?
Callan sat up, pulling his knees to his chest. His vulnerability was starkly apparent.
Allison made sense. She probably had other duties and left us to look after the kids. But 6 counselors, all of them disappearing. Our phone signal completely cutting out. Electricity cutting off, not once, but twice. What is even sucking all of our power?
I got the emergency generator working.
Olive raised her arm, but then trailed off.
Before Connor disappeared.
Callan finished for her.
And before him, it was Joey, Lily, Mira, Yuri, Noah, and Teddy. Which isn't a fucking coincidence.
He shot Rowan a look. Rowan glanced down at his lap. I could tell he was struggling with the burden of leadership, of formulating plans and providing the answers we desperately needed. His duty was to look after us, as well as the children, and thus far he was doing commendably. His expression revealed self-doubt, but he had managed to prevent the kids from discovering something as sinister as an active kidnapper targeting counselors. He made sure they were fed, entertained, and safely engrossed in a movie, while we trembled in fear. Despite his own terror, Rowan maintained the facade. With a sigh, he dropped his head into his lap. He seemed on the verge of succumbing to sleep before abruptly slamming the clipboard into his face to rouse himself. Nobody voiced the dread that Callan had expressed, but it was clear we all shared it.
This was planned.
Callan continued.
Someone out here is fucking with us, very deliberately trying to freak us out. Now they've got 6 of us.
He spread his arms wide.
How long until they start taking campers? We are in the middle of fucking nowhere with a serial kidnapper on the loose. And did we really just leave 15 kids in the care of a girl who thought Australia was in England?
In Carmel's defense, she was blackout drunk when she said that.
Olive murmured in a low voice.
Keep your voice down.
Rowan hissed.
Do you want to scare them?
His gaze flicked to me.
Did you do a head count during dinner?
I nodded. 15 kids, all accounted for. 10 are in the lunch hall, and 5 girls are in Cassie's cabin playing Operation.
All day?
Olive spoke up.
Weren't they playing that this morning? I tried to get into their cabin to give them breakfast, but they just shooed me away and locked the door.
Fuck,
Rowan said, running his fingers down his face.
All right, I'll go and see what's going on with them. Knowing Cassie and her friends, they're probably zonked out on stolen candy. When all of the kids are accounted for in the lunch cabin, we gather outside.
Swallowing nervously, I spoke up. I actually wanted to talk to you guys about something. Rowan lifted his head, resting the edge of the clipboard on his chin.
Go on.
I found something. I said uncertainly. Or rather, I think I've found something. I was at a loss on how to articulate to a group of terrified teenagers that there might be something even more menacing than potential kidnappers out there. 4 blank faces stared back at me while Rowan leaned forward with a frown.
Like, in general, Josie, we don't have time to go foraging.
You could call it a lead, I responded. But I need your eyes to find it.
But what is it?
Recalling exactly what I had seen, I realized I didn't have the words to describe it. It's better if I just show you. Rowan looked skeptical, but nodded.
Right. Josie comes with me. We'll check out Allison's cabin again to look for an emergency line. And you can show me whatever this thing is you found. Then we'll escort Cassie and the other girls to the lunch cabin. Every camper needs an escort from now on. The rest of you, act normal. If the kids see you freaking out, they will also freak out. And we need to keep up morale.
He pointed to Olive.
Olive, you sit in with the kids and look after them. Callan, check out the emergency generator. Harry, the kids see you as a playground ride, so use that to your advantage. Offer them horse rides if they're scared. And stop with the ghost stories. It's making it worse. Give them piggybacks.
Harry rolled his eyes.
Do I have a choice?
No.
Rowan cleared his throat.
We all keep up appearances. If the others turn up after getting high or, I don't know, having an orgy in the woods, I will kill them.
The way he smiled through his teeth, jumping off the bunk, his toes primed like a wild animal. I knew he wasn't joking. If this was a well-constructed prank the other counselors were playing, I had no doubt Rowan would rip them apart for leaving him as a reluctant leader. To my surprise, the others wandered off with their tasks. I watched Rowan lift up his pillow and pull out a pack of animal crackers, ripping open the bag and pouring the contents into his mouth. He caught my eye, crunching through mini animal crackers.
I didn't have lunch,
he said through a mouthful. I couldn't help feeling a sense of relief as we headed across camp, Rowan in front of me, while I lagged behind. So, what's the plan? I caught up to him, almost tripping over a log. The guy didn't turn around.
I am completely winging it,
he said through a choked laugh.
I have no idea what I'm doing. And if I'm honest, I just want to go home, dude. I haven't looked after this many kids in my life. And if I have to smile one more time at a little brat, I am going to lose my mind.
He heaved out a breath.
I'm just making this up as I go along.
I laughed that time. That's comforting.
Yeah?
He turned to shoot me a grin.
Well, rest assured I am just about as scared, if not more scared than you.
As we stopped in front of Cassie's cabin, his gaze found mine.
Is it me?
He said softly.
Or does the lunch cabin seem quiet?
He was right. The windows were dark when they should have been illuminated by the TV screen. Instead of answering, I stepped in front of him, grasping hold of the cabin door. Cassie, I knocked 3 times. Girls, are you okay in there? It's Josie and Rowan. I tried the door, and it slid open. Shooting a look at Rowan, I turned back to the door. We're coming in, okay?
Wait!
Cassie squeaked from inside.
But he's not finished.
Ignoring the coil of dread unraveling in my gut, I forced the door open and stepped into the unusually milky white light, which flooded the cabin. The first thing I saw was 8-year-old Cassie, sitting cross-legged with her back to me. She was sitting in a circle with the other girls, no doubt playing their game. When I stepped closer, however, I noticed something pooling across the wooden floor. It must have been juice or water that they had spilled. I took another step, but this time, clammy fingers wrapped around my wrist and yanked me back. Rowan didn't speak, but his eyes were elsewhere. I heard his breath start to accelerate, his grip tightening on my wrist. I had half a mind to pull away. Before I saw the body-shaped carcass, the girls were sitting around. In the dim light of the cabin, it used to be a person. Teddy! I could still see parts of an identity, freckled cheeks and eyes, which were still open, still staring at the sky. But that was where the similarities to the missing counselor ended. The thing which used to be Teddy was more of a shell, a scooped-out thing, resembling a human body. What sent me stumbling backwards, my mouth open in a silent scream, was the almost surgical efficiency of each organ's removal, like it really was a game of operation. His heart, lungs, and intestines were in one pile, while his brain was cupped between little Cassie's bloody hands. And when my gaze found the little girl, Nina, hiding behind dark curly hair, I was seeing what looked like a toy robot's head in her hands. In my head, I was thinking about the eye, with the metallic pieces glittering around its pupil, and something turned in my gut.
Did I find a human eye?
I was staring at the crevice inside the boy's skull and the boxes of surgical equipment piled on the girls' bunks when Rowan finally pulled me back and I was stumbling straight onto my ass.
We need to go.
Rowan spoke through a croak. Cassie's words rattled in my head.
Teddy wasn't finished.
Josie, get up, now.
My head was spinning, and I was sure I'd thrown up. I didn't even realize we had managed to stumble from the girls' cabin before cool air grazed my face, tickling my cheeks. Something wet and warm and lumpy was spattering the front of my shirt. Before I could coerce words, Rowan was pulling me to my feet, and I was seeing stars in my eyes, blinking brightly. When the two of us started forwards in a run, Rowan stopped abruptly. I followed his gaze to find several kids surrounding his cabin, where Harry, Olive, and Callan were. Maybe I was hallucinating, but Eleanor and Phoebe, both of whom were wielding weapons. I had no idea where they had gotten them. Looked taller, somehow. Rowan wasted no time dragging me back.
Allison's cabin.
He spoke in a cry which became a sob, pulling me across camp, stumbling over rocky ground. We need a phone! Fuck, we need a phone! Rowan was struggling to stand, occasionally bending over and choking up dust. They were playing Operation. Literal Operation. But they're just kids, I choked out. Little kids who had surgically removed every organ inside Teddy's body. Little kids who were hunting the other counselors down and would surely be coming for us. Allison's cabin was thankfully further into the woods. When we were safe inside and Rowan was locking the door, I dry heaved several times, unable to rid my mind of the sight of glistening gore splattering the cabin floor.
Josie.
Rowan was already tearing apart the cabin.
Work with me here, okay? We don't have fucking time to freak out. Or to barf. We need to get help. Now.
Rowan was losing it, and when he hit the ground on his knees, I took over. I started with Allison's desk. Nothing of importance, just documents and invoices. Digging through her drawers, I found nothing. We were running out of time. Abandoning the desk, I rummaged through her suitcase and bags. As I was crawling under her bed to try and find a weapon, Rowan hissed out,
"Wait."
When I turned to him, he was still kneeling, but his foot was pressing down on a loose plank. To my confusion, pulling at the loose plank revealed what looked like a trap door. Rowan turned to me.
You're kidding.
I could only stare at the trap door revealing stone steps. He peered down, his voice echoing.
Allison has a fucking secret bunker.
His lips curved into a surprisingly childish grin, which caught me off guard.
Oh wow, that is so cool.
Suddenly, the sound of loud squealing made me lift my head. I caught a glimpse of a group of littles, led by Eleanor, stalking towards us. Eleanor had a hostage. It was Harry, and with the way she was pressing the blade of a terrifying knife to his throat, I figured she meant business. Their height difference was almost comical. The 18-year-old Harry had to hunch over so the little girl could successfully keep him prisoner. Behind them in the trees, I could see something illuminating the dark, an electric blue light bathing their faces. So that's where the power was going. But what the hell were these 8-year-olds doing?
Josie,
Rowan hissed from down below. He had already climbed down. I joined him, struggling down the stone steps before replacing the loose plank. If these kids were as smart as I thought, it wouldn't take them long to figure out the trapdoor. Allison's bunker was more of a control room. There were multiple screens lit up, a chair in front of a working MacBook. The phone line was cut, but that didn't make sense. The kids were unaware of the bunker, so who cut the phone lines? Rowan was on the laptop, struggling to get through the password protection, so I turned my attention to piles of cardboard boxes. When I opened them, I found myself staring at animal crackers. There were hundreds of them, packed on top of each other. Looking further, digging through the boxes, I found a piece of old crumpled paper, which looked ancient. Regarding Project Spearhead subjects, please do not ingest unless absolutely necessary. If multiple subjects ingest, please use self-destruct. Only use in cases such as imminent destruction to the planet or threat of nuclear war. Please contact families in advance. Make sure to ingest with water to avoid neurological symptoms such as psychosis, extreme violence. Please approach subjects with caution. Something ice-cold slithered down my spine. Abandoning the boxes, I searched through a cabinet filled with files which were crumbling apart from age. I picked one at random and flicked through it. Eleanor Summers. Sex, female. Date of birth, 8/5/1977. Initially, I thought I was reading the dates wrong. But then, with my heart in my throat, I started grasping for other files. Eli Evermore. Sex, male. Date of birth, 8/3/1979. Rowan, I managed to croak out.
Yeah?
They're not children. He rubbed his eyes, frowning. His eyes were half-lidded, almost confused.
What?
Eleanor is 45 years old. He nodded slowly, turning back to the laptop.
How do you spell documents? I'm looking for digital versions, but I can't find any.
You don't know how to spell documents?
It's been a hard day.
He whined, tipping his head back and blowing a raspberry. Whatever I was going to say was choked in the back of my throat when a loud bang sounded from above. The sounds of childish giggling echoed through the floorboards. But the laughter didn't sound like little kids. No, it sounded like teenagers pretending to be little kids. I stared at the boxes of animal crackers, and then at the file, confirming Eleanor's real age. My own words echoed through me. And I remembered finding Teddy's dismembered carcass in Cassie's cabin. When I had caught her gaze, the little girl didn't look scared. Somehow, her fingers wrapped around the scalpel seemed just right, like she knew exactly what she was doing.
Hello?
Harry's voice was a hysterical giggle.
Ollie Ollie oxen free. Are you in here?
Carmel joined in. I could hear their footsteps above, dancing across the room. Clamping my hand over my mouth, I dragged my knees to my chest and prayed they weren't smart enough to figure out we were right underneath them. Knowing the truth about them, though, I wasn't counting on it. That was an hour ago. We're still stuck down here, but at least I can get a connection. Thank God. For some reason, Allison has blocked all social media. We need help. We're at Camp Redwood, and these kids are not kids. Whatever Project Spearhead is, it seems to have been designed to keep them here. The phone line is cut, so we can't get help from whoever was assisting Allison. I am counting on you guys. Get us out of here!
Well, my friends, we've reached the end of tonight's chilling tale. Camp Redwood are running out of counselors. These children are not children. By the talented Trash Tia. I hope you've enjoyed our descent into darkness, and that you'll carry a piece of the Fear File Chronicles with you as you drift into uneasy dreams. If our story left you shivering and shaking, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who crave a good scare, and subscribe to the Fear File Chronicles for more haunting horrors. Remember to hit the bell notification so you're always among the first to know when a new nightmare awaits. As always, we appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sharing your fears and frights with us truly means a lot, so don't be shy to engage with our sinister community. Until next time, remember to embrace the darkness, for it is within the shadows that our most terrifying stories are born. Good night and stay scared.